Hello guys, welcome back to Money Sense with Miss T. My name is Tendotlo and I am your financial coach. Thank you so much for a very warm welcome back onto your screens. Really appreciate the love that I'm seeing. Appreciate that, the subscription numbers have gone up. The comment section, guys, thank you so much for your engagement. I really appreciate it. It really does encourage me to keep going and keep creating and sharing some of the things that I have learned. So on today's episode, I'm just going to let you in on some of the resources that really helped me during my prenatal stage, postpartum to date, just in raising this baby or getting ready for baby. So I used a lot of resources, mostly books, YouTube videos, podcasts, as well as courses. And I'm just going to go through some of the resources that really stood out for me or really helped me and had an impact in the person I am today. I am hoping that these resources will really help you. So, okay, let's start with the first trimester. For me, this was a daunting season. I don't want to lie. It was a scary season, also a very sensitive season, a season to incubate. If you speak to the elders, they'll tell you must keep quiet, keep it under wraps. And also by just reading medical reports, then you just realize just how sensitive a time it is and just how risky a season it is, right? And I found that by just listening to the elders and reading these medical reports, I was sort of meditating a lot on things that really scared me, things that left me almost like disempowered and not knowing what to do, right? Until I remembered that a few years ago, I had just stumbled across a Facebook post from a friend who was explaining that she had a very tough pregnancy and a book just changed that season for her, changed her life in that she started meditating on the right things. She started meditating on the word of God concerning conception, concerning childbirth and, childbirth and just carrying the child full term. And that was Supernatural Childbirth by Jackie Measy. I'm obviously going to just flag these so that you guys can have access to them. And I just want to read a part of the introduction of this book that I think for me just gave me so much encouragement as soon as I started reading it. It just, I think, deposited a lot of faith. And this is a part that was written by her husband as part of the introduction. And this is what it says. I'm hoping that it will encourage you. When Jackie and I met and I began talking marriage, she said to me, "If we are going to get married, there is something about me you should know. I can't have children," she said. What a devastating statement. Women around the world have made the same declaration. My question to them now is the same question I posed to Jackie over 2 decades ago. Oh, really? Who said? Who said you can't have children? It makes a major difference in every area of our lives. Who said? I am always asking people that question. Who said? Jackie answered me. The doctor said. Oh, I see. Well, God said you can have babies. I told her, even though I thanked God for doctors and hospitals and medical science is always advancing, they are not our source. Our final authority, God is. And God said, you can have children. So these were the opening statements that I just felt, you know what, this is so encouraging. And this is just something I think incredible about this book is it's a book that you can read as you believe in God for conception. You can read like I did during your pregnancy, and it also really helped me to prepare for delivery. So the book is divided into 3 sections, which I really like. Obviously, the first part is where the husband is talking about their personal challenges around conception, and then it moves on to where now Jackie then explains how she started believing God for children and moved from, not having children to having as many children as she wanted. And then the last part is delivering the children, right? And then the third category of the book is which I really love the most. It's where it's got obviously Bible-based prayers and Bible-based declarations, so affirmations, if you may, that really encourage you to keep your mind fixed on the positive things, keep your mind fixed on the promises of God concerning conception, concerning giving birth, concerning children. And I think this was the right resource for me to meditate on during that season. And I think it really, really changed the way that I carried, right? Because guys, I think a lot of the battles that we fight are in our heads, are in our minds. And if we can conquer that space and start thinking about, just like the Bible encourages us to think about the things that are good, things that are trustworthy, right? It can really change the way we navigate a season. So I want to be very clear, right? So Jackie's version of having a supernatural birth speaks to delivering the baby vaginally without pain. So I went into that hospital believing for obviously natural delivery, but in terms of pain, I had already made a plan around, making sure that I get that epidural, which I did actually need at the end of the day. So we went into that hospital psychologically psyched up to win, right? To deliver the baby naturally, right? We wanted to have a water birth, candles were ready, great playlist, affirmations, we were really, really ready, really, really hopeful. And I'm glad that that was the mindset that I went into, because if you just start reading about childbirth stories and you watch YouTube videos, like, again, a lot of fear can interfere with how you perceive childbirth, right? But the long and short of it is, I came out of that hospital with the most beautiful baby on planet Earth and a C-section wound. Would I still recommend this book as a great resource to invest in during your prenatal state? I say yes, because it really, really helped me to win the battle in my mind during that season. All right, so the other resource that I felt really, really helped us was an online course that we found on a platform called Mind Valley. And it was a course by a doula called The Fourth Trimester. So my husband just bought the book so that we have it. But what we did is we actually watched the course online. It was written by a lady. She's a doula called Kimberly Ann Johnson. Very, very helpful resource. I found it to being a resource that, after listening to it now in retrospect, I'm actually just thinking, these are simple things that we probably overlook or we probably take for granted because we think it's obvious or it's simple. But I think we took it seriously because we just knew that, it's the two of us and we need to make sure that this thing works, right? So she talks about the importance of being intentional, right? So she started off by painting a scene around, imagine you coming back from hospital with this baby and you walk into your home. What does that environment look like? Is it a clean house, right? Is there food in this house? What does this house smell like, right? Who are the people in the house? Is it the right type? Is it the right people that you want to receive you and your baby? Have you communicated, just as an example, the level of support you need from your support structure, right? And the extent to which you're going to require this level of support. Just for an example, we asked Kai's grandmother to come in for the first 10 days from delivery, right? So very important to have those conversations with the people that you want to support you during the time when, obviously, I mean, we didn't know how I was going to give birth. But even if I did give birth naturally, we just knew that we were going to need support because it was our first baby. We actually had no idea what was coming, right? But I loved and appreciated the fact that she just gave us like a very basic checklist of the things that we want to make sure that we know and we are in control of and we have communicated or at least thought of before the baby comes in. The other area was around maternity and paternity leave, right? So again, all of this has what do you call this, financial implications. So money sense, right? So the money sense in the sense that you want to make sure that you're also giving your baby, enough time to take care of them, right? Obviously within reason. Not everyone can afford to take a year off. I know in the UK it's very common, but where I come from in South Africa, 4 months is probably what most people are what most people have access to, right? So just thinking about, maternity as well as paternity, right? Because you are going to need your partner, you're going to need your husband during that time. So yeah, we spoke about stuff like that. And then the other area, which is, I think, probably again the most underrated part, the 90 days post delivering a baby is considered, again, another high risk area for women, right, to experience postnatal depression, right, because a lot is happening. You move from being, an independent person, someone who just moves around as they pleases. You don't have to you don't have to like ask for permission for anyone to move around because you're an adult, right, to being in a situation where you have this beautiful gift from God, who is reliant on you, who is dependent on you day and night for everything and anything under the sun, right? Of course, you were born and you were created to be able to handle that, but that's overwhelming. That can be overwhelming, and those are just some of the things that can cause, this level of depression. And so it's so important. She mentioned the fact that it's so important to make sure that you are accessing the right type of help, because giving birth to a child, whether you gave birth to them vaginally or whether you gave birth to them through C-section, is a traumatic event. And it's important that you enlist the services of people who are qualified to deal with mental health, to deal with helping you deal with what has happened, mentally as well as emotionally, because a lot has happened. A lot has happened for you as the mom. A lot has happened even for the father. So very, very important, ladies, especially, to take care of yourself during that time. Get a counselor. I had a counselor. I had to debrief on how I walked into that hospital. I literally was wearing a mini dress, walked into that hospital very confident, ready to get into that tub and deliver my baby vaginally. And I walked out with a C-section, right? Unmet expectations. And when I told my mom about this, moms, she was just like, bless her. My mom was just like, oh no, let's not worry about that. Let's just thank God that you are safe and that baby is safe and you're now home. The wound will heal. Wonderful, great. We praise the Lord for that. But I needed someone who was qualified to deal with stuff like this, to help me process what has just happened, because again, it's a traumatic thing that has happened. So very, very important, guys, to get help, as much help as you can, to deal with your mental and your emotional well-being during that time. All right, postpartum, right? Now the baby is here and we need to start thinking about investing in the baby directly, right? So we used, again, multiple types of resources. And when it came to investing in the baby's nutrition, we invested in this book, Weaning Sense, right? And this just talks about how you transition from exclusively breastfeeding or exclusively giving the child milk to combination feeding, which is a combination of milk as well as solids. So it really, really helped me with that transition, because what I knew growing up, so fun fact about me, I am 12 years older than my youngest sister, right? So that tells you that I sort of remember how she was weaned, right? And my memory of how she was weaned was she was given mealie meal porridge, and I remember my mom used to send me to go buy these things, mealie meal porridge, as well as the bottles, the purity bottles with what do you call it, fruits and vegetables, etc., right? Nothing wrong with that. But I think this book took it a notch up for me in terms of just really, really being intentional about what we are putting in the body, because we are, guys, what we eat. We really are. So I'm just going to read something here that I felt was really enlightening for me. So this book was written by two women, a pediatric dietitian as well as an occupational therapist. So they start off by saying, science tells us that the first 100 days, so that means pregnancy until the child is 2 years old, has a dramatic impact not only on your child's whole life, but on the next generation as well. This is true for brain development. A baby needs to be stimulated. It is also true for their emotional well-being. A baby needs to be loved. It is also true for their health. A baby needs a nutritious diet, right? And I think for me, this book empowered and really equipped us to know what to do as soon as we felt like, you know what, it's time for us to introduce solids. So we exclusively breastfed, which was great. And I know for some people it's not always possible, but if you can, I would recommend that you really try it out. Try out breastfeeding, right? So we breastfed, and then when it came to introducing foods, you may be asking yourself, when do we actually start? I know my mother did not wait for me to be 4 months to give me solids, but this book talks about cues. Your child will indicate to you that they are ready, and there are things that you can start looking out of, which are documented in this book, that will tell you, or rather that will indicate that the child is ready for solids, right? So with regards to the other areas of the book that I really sort of appreciated and liked was the fact that it's divided into stages. So the first stage is obviously from 4 months to 6 months. Then the authors sort of give you like a very comprehensive guidance on what you should be giving your child and why you should be giving your child those things, right? So the nutritional benefits to that, and also just giving you an understanding of really just how big the stomach is and how important it is to give them the appropriate food for the size of the stomach. So yeah, stuff that I think I didn't know. I'll be very honest, I didn't know. So just an example of the first stages. So the first few foods that we gave him was avocado. Like again, encourages the money sense way of feeding your child, buying food that is close to its natural state as possible, right? Like just getting a banana or getting avocados from the shop instead of buying it in a tin or in a sachet that you are going to pay for. I know, I'm not that extreme, I promise you, but I think it really does make a difference what we put into our stomachs, right? So yeah, just as an example, banana again, what do you call it? Just mash it with a fork, and then what I would always put in breast milk just to make it a little bit loose for the baby to consume with ease. Another example of first foods that I enjoyed was sweet potato, the orange sweet potato, as well as oatmeal, right? So we eat oats all the time, but with his oats, what we did was and all of this is in this book. We just blended it so that it's in a powder form, cooked the oats, and then put in peanut butter. Because again, it's important. It's important that you're putting the right kinds of oils into the food. Again, another thing that I did not know, right? Putting in the right amount of oils or the right types of oils when you are feeding your baby. And what I'll do is I'll just always put in breast milk to make the solids more the solids more consumable for purposes of baby. Investing in prayer. Say to your neighbor, prayer. Guys, prayer changes things. The other day I was talking to my friend, and we were just laughing and reminiscing about the olden days, laughing about how, our parents always used to go to tabironi. Tabironi is prayer. They always went to church to go and pray. And I think as a child, you just always like, geez, like what on earth are you praying about every single day, or every other Thursday? But I think now as a parent, as an adult, I understand. I understand that prayer is probably that resource that we have as children of God to just, lift up whatever issue that we have to God as our Father, and He hears us and He comes through for us. So I would spend a lot of my days, especially now that my husband had gone back to work, and Kai's grandmother had gone back home because she was not always with us. So I'd spend a lot of my days on that rocking chair. We invested in a very good quality rocking chair. because again, it was important because I was always breastfeeding on that chair. And I would spend, hours and hours on that chair. And I just naturally felt the need to just cover the baby in prayer. There's only so much you can do on your phone and on the apps. And I just had this great sense of wanting to pray and cover, the baby in prayer and just, believe the best, for the baby, and believe that, they will live out their God-given purposes. And I remember this book by Stormy Omotion. I don't know if you know about her, but she's great. She's got a 3-part series, very popular books called The Power of a Praying Parent. So that's this one, The Power of a Praying Wife. I think that's the popular one, and The Power of a Praying Woman, right? So that's the 3-part. I've never read the other 2, but I started off by reading this one, The Power of a Praying Parent, because I was just like, no man, there must be someone who's written a book about the specific things we need to pray for or pray about where our children are concerned. And guys, when I opened the table of contents, I was just like, geez, like this is a lot. So there are 32 things. So I just did a plan for myself, and I was like, for the next month and a bit, I'm going to, and an extra one day, I'm going to just pray over one area, right? And I like that this book is divided into sections. It's a very structured book. I'm sure you've already picked up that I like structure. It's structured in that she obviously introduces the topic, and then at the end of the topic, there are scriptures that support, Bible-based scriptures that support the area that we are praying for. And then lastly, she's got a prayer that she's written out, and on top, you can actually insert your child's your child's name, and it sort of gives you guidance on how to pray for that area. So I felt after the month and so that I invested in just praying, and I'm still going to do this. I mean, every year I think I'm just going to use this book as guidance to praying for areas. I felt like, you know what, this is a great, very, very great resource. I'm just going to give you an example of some of the things that I felt, only now when the child is 4 months, we're already praying about these things. So just as an example, releasing my child into God's hands. That was one of the prayer items. Attracting godly friends and role models, yeah. Being the person God created him to be. I think for me, this one was a highlight, because I think for most of us, we are in seasons in our lives where we are like, you know what, we want to know what the call of God is on our lives. We want to know what our purpose is. We want to live out our purpose. We want to live out our God-given purpose. And I think the younger you know that, the better. I think it's just best for all of us to know what we were created for, as soon as possible or as young as possible. And one that obviously got me excited was finding the perfect mate, because we all know, guys, that the person you marry can either make you or break you. So yeah, The Power of a Praying Woman by Stormy Omotion. The other resource around investing in prayer that I got my hands onto a little bit later in Kai's life was Praying Circles Around Your Kids by Mark Batterson. And the backstory to Mark Batterson is in 2019 into 2020, I lived in America. And as soon as I arrived in DC, I remember just thinking, you know what, I need to get, plugged into a good Bible-based church. And so I naturally asked my friend Mandy, who had lived in America or in DC for most of her postgraduate years, and she told me about Mark Batterson. So I naturally Googled him, Googled the church, but I found that it was just a little bit too far from where I was and just not practical to get to church realistically, right? But I Googled him, and I learned that he authored a book called The Circle Maker. Life-changing book. I read it during a very low season in my life, during COVID. Really lifted me up. And really, the issue around praying circles is a metaphor that speaks to praying without ceasing, right? When you have a situation, just continuously praying. Like, I don't know if you know that those acronyms, push, pray until something happens. So similar concept around praying. And so he's authored this book, as well as Praying Circles Around Your Marriage. I haven't gotten my hands onto that one, but I want to read that one. But yeah, I'm just going to share something in this book that I felt was, was great. And as you can see, it's a very small book. You can literally finish it in a day if you have that type of appetite to read. So he says, make sure the Heavenly Father hears about your kids every day, right? So just encouraging us to pray circles around our children concerning everything, really. And then the part that my parting words around this book is a statement which he says that you'll never be a perfect parent. Great. But you can be a praying parent. Prayer is your highest privilege as a parent. There is nothing you can do that will have a higher return on investment. In fact, the dividends are eternal. Investing in marriage. Yo, guys, I think this is one of the areas that was a little bit challenging, and it was challenging because now there is an additional human, like I said initially, that is solely dependent on you as the parents for everything, for their entire livelihood. I mean, there were times when we didn't even sleep because we were just all trying to make sure that the baby is breathing, and you just realize how much time becomes a limited commodity, right? You don't even have enough time. I will speak for myself. There were times where I was just like, I don't even feel like I have enough time to shower, right? Let alone just take care of the next person who is your husband. So very important to, again, be intentional about and to think through the things you're going to do to always come to a place where you can connect. And I remember we had a cousin of ours that encouraged us, or rather shared what they were doing when they were when their kids were a bit younger, and they spoke about how they established a working routine, a routine that worked for them, where at a certain time the baby is eating in the evening, and at a certain time the baby is, you're doing bedtime and story reading and praying, and once the baby is settled and sleeping, then it's time for mom and dad to have a glass of wine. So we would have a cup of tea, and that would be our time to connect. But it took a lot of hard work, because I think establishing a routine like that, where not always perfect, takes work, and it takes being intentional. But that time to connect, even if on some days it was 15 minutes or 30 minutes, it made a difference, because we have to connect with each other. Before baby, it was us, and it's so important to invest and continue to sow and invest in the marriage. But most recently, we attended a marriage course, which I think, again, just took things to another level where investing in marriage is concerned. It's called the marriage course. Again, it made money sense. We paid £20 amongst the two of us. So really, that's not a lot of money, and it's available worldwide. We did the live event. There's also an online version. And I appreciated, the format in which the course was conducted. So we attended. It was about 6 hours. It was organized by our church, and I liked how the different topics were unpacked, and how we were also afforded the opportunity to unpack those specific areas in our specific lives. So I'll just give an example of the format around creating date time, creating time to connect with your spouse, right? So the authors of the authors of the marriage course were the ones that were facilitating. So they would stand up and then introduce and then introduce a topic. For example, how to invest in connection, right? And an example of how to invest in connecting with your spouse was having date time, specific date time that you set aside intentionally on a weekly basis to sit down or to take a walk with your partner and just connect at a deep and meaningful level. So they would stand up and introduce the topic and tell us how they have navigated this space in their different seasons of life. So I think they've been married for about 46 years. So obviously there's a lot that has happened. There was a time when their kids were small, and then the kids became teenagers, or whatever the case is. So date time sort of looks different in different seasons. So I appreciated how they sort of unpacked how they constantly were intentional around, setting aside time. It didn't matter whether the kids were small or big, setting time to invest in their well-being as a married couple. And then they would flight online a few couples around the world that also did the course, and again they would explain how they approach their date time and the value that date time has in their marriage, and basically time that you spend connecting with your wife or with your husband. And then lastly, they would open the floor to us to sit down and now reflect on the dates that we've had, which we feel like, we feel like we really enjoyed this format of dating, and we really enjoyed connecting at the level at which we connected, and then do an assessment on where you are, where date time is concerned. And for us, I will be very honest, we had sort of, I don't want to say neglected it, but it was something that for us was an area of development. Let me put it that way, an area of development, or rather even something like an area where we needed to up our game, because for us, we were just committed to, once a month to do something big and something grand. We didn't have, this added layer that we now know that actually we need to be connecting on a weekly basis, and we can do this in an inexpensive manner, right? In a manner that also makes money sense, a manner that is sustainable, like just sitting and having tea or coffee at the fireplace, or taking a walk, or taking a hike, or whatever the case is. Because I think for us, when we thought about what date time looks like, it had to be grand. It had to be at the nicest restaurant, and then we're dressing up in new clothes, da 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 da. But I think the examples that we got sort of obviously raised our level of awareness to say, oh, actually, there are many ways in which you can have meaningful time to connect with your partner that will not necessarily cause you to break the bank, right? And then lastly, we needed to then commit to date time, how we were going to do date time going forward, in the interest of investing in the marriage, in the interest of making sure that you are always connected to the person that you said I do to. All right, that is a wrap. But before we wrap it up, I just thought to also include this bonus book. It's the 10 things every parent needs to know. We haven't started reading this book, but it was highly, highly recommended. And I thought I should just share, as well as if you are going into your postpartum season, the first 40 days. My husband read this, and I must say, it showed that he read this, because the meals that he prepared for me during my postpartum, the time when I was healing from the C-section, it really made a difference. So yeah, the first 40 days, I will obviously tag all of these in the description box. And guys, that's it for today. If you really enjoy this type of content, I will encourage you to subscribe, to share it with as many people as you can to grow the channel, and to please let me know in the comment section what practical things you are doing to invest in yourself as a mom, as well as investing in your children. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and seeing you next time. Bye.